Hi, my name is Amelia. I'm 12 years old, and I thank you for letting me speak tonight. I have called in to open comments during Pittsfield City Council meetings before. I have let the mayor and the city council know that my sister and I have been experiencing symptoms since the tower in my neighborhood was turned on. I get dizzy and nauseous and sleep with a vomiting bucket near my bed. My sister gets headaches and skin rashes. We both have trouble sleeping. Before Christmas, my sister had really bad days. The radio frequency radiation in her room measured higher than it ever had. Her symptoms were so bad from the tower that my parents had to move her room and put it in a room further away from the tower. During the holidays, neighbors came by and told us how they were feeling. Some people live even closer to the tower than we do. There are children younger than us who live right next to it. We learned some of them have constant ringing in their ears, and others have vertigo and are actually spending time in their car instead of in their home, just to get away from the tower. People who can stay elsewhere have left, but this is not sustainable, and it is no way to live. We also have a neighbor who is diagnosed with cancer. We don't want to leave our homes, but if we stay, will we get cancer too? I am asking for your help. When I went to preschool, my teachers taught me if I couldn't work something out myself to ask the big people in the room. I have been asking you, the city councilors, the big people, for help, and no one is helping. It is a new year, and I hear the city has a campaign to bring back the joys of life, and it comes with a renewed commitment to our community health. Mayor Tyre, I am hoping, as our elected leader and big person, that you will please help my neighbors and my family. Please commit to help us feel safe and healthy at home by turning off the cell tower. Thank you. And this one was from the 28th of January. Hi, my name is Amelia. I am 12 years old, and thank you to the mayor and city councilors for letting me speak tonight, and please to try to take action on our behalf. That is what I am asking you to do, to please hear me and to take action. Since August, the health department and the city have been aware of the neighbors experiencing symptoms that started when the cell tower was made active. Mayor Tyre, in August, we let you know about my sister waking up and feeling dizzy, headachy, and having a buzzing head. When my mom called Verizon, they said that was the day they had fired up the tower. Please let us know, what have you been doing to help? We've been calling in for months because we need your help. I asked my mom what has changed between calling in to open comments 2 weeks ago on January 12th to now, or calling in last month to now. Is it working? Are our voices being heard? Is the city responding? From what I see, nothing has happened. Nothing has happened to help prevent a tower from blindsiding another neighborhood. Nothing has helped to stop the tower in our neighborhood. I've called in to ask you, as my big person, to do something about this. My teachers say that if you don't let someone know about a problem, they can't do anything about it. This cell tower has been a problem for months. I'm letting you know about it. I'm asking for your help. How is it bringing back the joy to life when we spend all our time at the doctors? When we have to talk about moving away from the home I love and was born in? When we are sick in our own home? When the other children I play with here are also sick? When they have to think about moving? When mom drags me to look at awful old houses far away from anything I love or even like? And when she spends her time trying to provide the city with all the information it needs for you to make decisions that can help us? Why would I want to live next to a cell tower when it causes health issues? Why would you allow them to go up next to homes when they could be placed safely away from them? And why, Mayor Tyre, would I want to stay in a city that ignores its children? Please help us. Thank you.
Well,
I'm very proud of her for speaking out. You know, she has been a very vocal advocate from a very young age, speaking out about community matters. a lot of fundraising, a lot of food pantry work, a lot of work here in our very own community. And we never thought in a million years that we would have to now ask our community for help. We always thought we'd be the ones giving it in terms of baking bread for the baking angels and volunteering our time or donating warm coats for the Christian Center or doing the giving tree at Christmas for the families who couldn't afford it. We never thought we'd find ourselves in this position on the other side of it, asking for their help to keep our family in our own home. And we had asked the city, Berkshire Wireless, and Verizon to please let us know when the tower would be transmitting, and they didn't. But turns out we didn't need to ask, because one day Jocelyn, Amelia's little sister, came downstairs and said that she was headachy, dizzy, and buzzy. And we thought, oh goodness, what's going on? And we found out another neighbor woke up that morning in AFib, so his heart skipped a beat. And we found out another family closest all had rolling headaches. When we went out to the tower, all of a sudden the electrical meter was now spinning. There was no sign on it, so we posted on the Facebook page that there was no contact information about the tower. Somebody came out on a weekend and put a sign up. As soon as there was a number, we called it. And the Verizon representative down in Texas confirmed that the day that everybody had symptoms was the day that they fired up the tower. And Amelia can tell you a little bit about her symptoms and how it's impacted her and her sister.
Yeah, so when I first was introduced to the tower, I had been away at a nature camp, so I was far away. I came back, and the first night I was back, I woke up and I was really sick. I was dizzy, nauseous, felt like I was gonna throw up. And I woke up Mom, and I said, Mom, I'm sick. And it was the day the tower had been fired up. And so we figured that out. And then ever since then, I've been having similar symptoms. And so has my sister. And sadly, she's gotten even worse than I have, with skin rashes and dizziness and her headaches and everything. And it's been awful.
Sounds awful.
It's
How
no way.
long has this been going on?
Ever since the tower was started, which was when?
So back in August, the tower was fired up, but I think that it was probably another few weeks until the beginning of September or the end of August before it was transmitting full time. So I think, and I don't know anything about the 4G world or the tower construction world. It's an interesting process to see it go up and be built. But when they first fire up the tower, the tech described it's a process of getting all the towers to communicate with each other. So all the nearby ones. So for example, we're not an area that is lacking in towers or lacking in service. We actually have 3 cell towers that are visible from our back window. And we were successfully schooling and working from home during the pandemic without this tower. And according to Verizon's coverage map, there was full 4G LTE coverage to the area. I think this was a supplemental tower that was being built here, but with no gap or no need for it. So I think there was a period of time where the tower was being configured and communicating with the other towers before it got its final electrical permits. And then in the beginning of September, started transmitting full time. At that point, we started hearing from other neighbors as well, asking, do you know if the tower is on? We're waking up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning with insomnia. We're waking up with palpitations. People started having an increase in headaches. The insomnia then led to daytime fatigue. And there's a few people who are closest to the tower who have really bad tinnitus. And they've seen the doctors, and the doctors have said, there's really nothing that you can do. Yet if they spend a few days away from their home, the symptoms decrease and they don't have it anymore. So for us, it's a very clear correlation that when the tower was turned on, these things didn't exist for us beforehand. but now they exist now.
Amelia, I've heard you speak at meetings as well. Can you tell me what you've done, where you've spoken out at city council meetings, and what ended up being the result of that?
So yeah, we've been all speaking at a lot of city council meetings. We've been begging our city councilors and Mayor Tyre to please sign our petition, donate to our GoFundMe, and please turn this tower off. And it's been months since the end of August, since before then, that we've been calling in. We've been asking our big people for help, and so far, we've still seen nothing. The city councilors say they support us, but we haven't seen anything showing that they've supported us. And another way that we've been spreading awareness for this was our cell tower holiday greeting cards. We've been going up to the tower with our holiday themed cards. We had ones for Christmas, like our new neighbor is really a Grinch, or deck the halls with EMFs, because all there's been is EMFs, and the tower is definitely not our friend. And then our latest one for Valentine's Day. You make my heart skip a beat, palpitations, AFib, that type of stuff. And I mean, it may seem like a joke, but this tower is not a joke, but it seems like the only way we'll get people to see.
How has this affected you and your sister and your friends?
Along with all of our symptoms, Mom has been really focused on stopping this thing. And so we've barely been seeing her anymore all day long. She's just on the computer, on calls, on Zoom meetings, advocating for us. And while we know it's the best thing to do because we have to stop this, it's also really hard when one of your family members is just non-existent in your life. And I love Mom a lot, and it's really hard seeing her so stressed out over this. And then my sister, I haven't been able to do as much stuff with her because she's always been so sick. And then there's all this, and then you can't really spend time with your friends because it's online, and online gives more EMFs. And Dad's tried to wire up as much as our devices, so we have a cabled connection instead of having to use Wi-Fi. And because the Wi-Fi is just making it even worse. And then the only way to talk to other people outside your family is on the internet through online games. It's really hard because they'll be like, hey, do you want to play a game with me? Do you want to play Among Us or Roblox, all these popular games? And I'll be like, I'm sorry, I can't because it makes me really sick if I do.
Yeah, and I think one of the challenging things has been that, you know, both of the girls have bedrooms that are on the side of the house, which is closest to the tower, and those are where we get the highest readings from the tower. And Amelia is pretty insistent. She wants to stay in her room, although I'd like to switch her downstairs to the office. We know that we're already moving into temporary accommodation, hopefully by the 1st of March. And the girls are not wanting to move because this was the home that they have been born into. You know, we bought here 15 years ago looking to start a family and wanting to be in an area without infrastructure and that was safe and wooded and beautiful and a place where we want to raise our children. We've been very happy here. We love our home. We love our community. And the house works for us in terms of, you know, schooling and working remotely. Everybody has their own room and their own space. But since the tower has been on, we've seen the increase. We bought a meter prior to the tower being active, so we were able to take readings both in our neighborhood and our home, and we had low, safe green readings in our house. You know, we have had wireless in the past Wi-Fi. It's always been on a timer. It's always been limited, and we've always had you know, safe cabled connections when we're on the computer and the girls don't have cell phones. And so it's always been limited, and we've had, you know, the blessing of a safe space. And when the tower was transmitting, That wasn't our reality anymore. And we've seen as the power to the tower has increased, we've seen the readings go from, the top of the yard being read to now in the girls' room being read. And Jocelyn actually can't sleep in her room anymore because she has a sensation that her skin is crawling. And we've had to move her bedroom into our bedroom. And right now there's only 6 antennas on the tower, but because of co-location, which I think is probably a fantastic idea if you have a tower away from houses, but if you have it in a residential neighborhood, the idea of minimizing infrastructure by having additional carriers add on to that is terrifying to us, because right now it's just 6 antennas. But what happens when all 48 antennas are now on this tower and you have 8 residential streets and you've got families who are living here, and because of the pandemic, we're exposed 24/7. And if we feel this way right now and we're experiencing these symptoms with 6 antennas, what are we going to feel like at 48? I mean, nobody wants to stay around to find out. I mean,
Yeah. There's not much you can do once it becomes a wireless facility. I think a lot of people don't realize that when a tower first goes up, because once it is a wireless facility, to co-locate and to add on more antennas and to just stack it and even make it higher is really a simple process.
yeah, and it's already been approved for those.
Oh, really?
It's already been approved. So right now it's at 115 feet with 6 antennas, but the permit was based on it going up 150 feet and having 48 antennas. So I believe that it would have to go through a meeting, but the goal and the new Pittsfield wireless zoning ordinances that were updated in 2019, their goal was really to minimize the number of new towers being built. It's almost like a recycling program, which sounds really great in many
Right.
ways, right? So to reduce the amount of infrastructure,
Right.
we want to build on existing towers, but they need to have the base capacity and the strength to be able to hold those. So all new towers being built now have to be able to co-locate. And being so close to houses, that is just a horrendous idea. And so we've really advocated when we called into our community development meetings and our city council meetings, we've petitioned for cell tower setbacks away from home, 1,600 feet. We've looked at the...
Was that successful?
No, completely unsuccessful.
But so that didn't pass.
So what happens is, in order to have a petition, you take it to the city councilors, and the city councilors actually became the petitioners for us. I'm really proud of our city councilors here in Pittsfield because they got educated right alongside with us. We were brand new to this issue 11 months ago, and so were they. And with everything on their plates with COVID, they did take the time to learn about the issues about radio frequency radiation and the towers. And so successfully, they were able to say, yes, we believe that all towers should be located away from residential areas where people live, sleep, and spend their time. They were able to look at the zoning ordinances set out by other municipalities and say, we should be able to follow suit. And at that city council meeting, we had unanimous support. 11 out of 11 city councilors voted in support of safe cell tower setbacks and of certified mail notifications. So what happens right here in the city of Pittsfield is that there is no certified mail, so there's no proof that those letters were ever sent. So they can say, well, we sent them.
I got it.
But there's no need to have a receipt of that. And so we wanted to change the zoning ordinance to not only say that you sent them, but to actually have proof that they were mailed and to be able to send them to a greater range of community members. So for example, we live right outside that 300-foot line. but we're clearly being impacted, and we have neighbors the next house down and the next house down who are also experiencing these symptoms.
Well,
There's a lot of physics, right, that go into how many antennas and what's the directionality, and then where's the lobe and where's that. And right now we've got 6 in different, we've got 2 here, and 2 here. And so even I can walk around the neighborhood with my meter and I can see where, most of it is being concentrated, and where, where there are areas still that are lower readings and higher readings. And people come and knock on my door. This summer we had a tag sale. So I used to run a preschool, and the preschool closed, and we were thinking about opening it up here. And then we discovered the tower, and we started learning about this and thought, this is not a great idea. We put out a survey to our families, and we actually learned that the parents would not send their children to a preschool that was located next to a tower, because they didn't want to risk their children in care for 6 to 8 hours a day next to a cell tower. So instead of holding on to all that preschool equipment, we had a tag sale. And a woman came up to me, and I'd never seen her before, and she's in the neighborhood, but she's further beyond. And she brought a bag of stuffed animals and $50 and said, I would have thought I was too far away to be experiencing the health effects of this, but I swear I've had these awful headaches. And every time I go away, I don't have them. And when I come home, this is real. And I want to support your efforts. I just thought that it was a blight, that it was something that was ugly. It shouldn't go in a residential area, that it was deceitful. But now I'm actually experiencing it for myself. So thank you for bringing up that, even people who are farther away, it's not just proximity, but there's a lot that goes into this. Every opportunity in terms of creating transparency around letting people have a voice about the location of this tower here never happened. So it was a failure upon failure. Letters were not sent out to abutters. There was no, in the newspaper, there was a 1-inch by 1-inch legal notification, and it said a wireless facility constructed at 877 South Street. Now we are a Holmes Road neighborhood. So you would have to get the newspaper, first of all, and many people don't. Second, you would have to see it. And unless you were keeping your eye out for a legal notification, I don't know why you would read it. Third, you'd have to know what a wireless facility is. The telcos don't use plain language. They don't tell you it's a 150-foot cell tower that has 48 antennas from 4 different carriers. That has a different impact. When you read that, you know what that is, right? A wireless facility, I don't know, and so if you're looking at it and the address says 877 South Street, well, that's a commercial address. Why would that affect a residential neighborhood? So I think a really important question is the city council, 10 out of 11 city councilors voted to have us have a voice at the table by a re-permitting process. Now the city council, the legal counsel to Pittsfield City Council said that's not a thing and you can't do it.
You mean, so you're saying that 10 out of 11 city council members voted to ensure that there was transparency and that you were properly notified, and then that got vacated somehow?
Correct. The city attorney said that was not, because the tower had already been permitted, that we couldn't go back and do it correctly.
Oh.
Which was devastating because it was a failure of notification. It was very clear. These abutters came forward, 16 people, I believe, who were meant to have been in receipt of a series of 4 legal notifications, and none of them had received these notifications saying that a cell tower was going to be constructed abutting their properties, and here was when the meeting was, and if they couldn't make the meeting, here's how they could submit their objections in writing. And no one had received that notification. And the response from the city when people contacted the mayor and the community development office was it received a clean permit back in 2017. But we were able to receive videos. People sent us videos of the permitting meeting back in 2017, and we were referred to as open space, and nobody lives there. So at
Wow.
no point in the 2017 permitting meeting did anybody bring a list of all of the abutters who not just live here and own real property here, but who also own land right around the tower, and they bought those parcels of land to build their dream home on. The
Oh,
land up
wow.
here is beautiful. Right next to the tower, you're overlooking October Mountain. In the back, you overlook Yoakum Ridge. So you've got this beautiful, idyllic location. And now people are literally not paying taxes on their land, and they will just lose it because they feel like it is of no value with the cell
Wow.
tower there. And it happens to about historic Arrowhead. So if you know Herman Melville and the story Moby Dick, the great American novel about the Industrial Revolution and man versus nature, and how Captain Ahab fights this white whale, and in the end, the white whale, Moby Dick, wins. Well, now when you pull into historic Arrowhead, you see in the background, which was part of the Melville original farm, you see a 115-foot cell tower with 6 cellular antenna blighting that historic property. And the director of Arrowhead has been interviewed and has written letters and has said, our job as a historic society is to prevent blight on these historic properties. If we had known this tower would be built, we would have written a letter against it. So that goes to show the extent of how blindsided our entire community was around the tower. Yeah. It's not just us. If we were one family, we could move, but the reason why we fight is because, like in Amelia's letters, we have neighbors who come to our door and who tell us that during the summer, it was okay for them after work to spend time driving around, getting takeout, going to the wildlife sanctuary, or going to the lake and having a picnic and being away from their home. But now it's the middle of winter, it's 3 degrees, 17 degrees outside, and they're spending time in their car, and it's not sustainable. And this is no way for people to live. That people are literally abandoning their land that they were planning on building their dream house on, because now it will have a view of a tower and the potential health effects that come along with it. That people here who have invested in a home, you come to a residential neighborhood because you feel like the residential qualities that you came here for, the beautiful nature, the trees, the safe, secure aspect, will be what you get to gift to your children when you can no longer stay here. And now all of the work that we've done in terms of adding on to the house and building a beautiful porch and building a beautiful deck, we feel like we've invested in it, but we'll never get that back, because who is going to want to buy with a cell tower up the street? I mean, who's going to want to say, I'm happy to live in a house knowing that its previous residents were sick?
And some people can move even though they don't want to, but we have some neighbors who they're older and they go, we can't move to another house, it's just too much and we don't want to stay here, but they literally have no other choice. And because they're older, it's going to affect them more, and there's nothing they can do about it.
What are the neighbors reporting in terms of symptoms?
So we have, thinking about people who are closest to the tower, we have people who have tinnitus, ringing in their ears, an increase in headaches or headaches when previously that was not an issue. We have people who are experiencing insomnia and palpitations. We have a few women in the neighborhood who report hormonal issues. So having gone through menopause, but now, it's been years since they've had a hot flash, but now they're having hot flashes. It feels like they're going through menopause all over again and wondering, could this be a result of the tower? Nothing else has changed in their diet or in their life. But this is something that's different. And, we are in the Berkshires. We're in a very health conscious area of the world. We have Canyon Ranch and Kripalu and Miraval. So people come here to kind of get away from the city and to get away from all of the smog and pollution and to detox and to heal and to rest. And so a lot of people here work for those organizations, and so they live a natural lifestyle. Or, for example, a family came from Manhattan. They used to live in the city, and they came here to the country to get away from that kind of infrastructure and the smog, and to raise their family here. So you have people here who are making choices to eat organically, to not use plastics but glass. And one of the choices that they have made is to not live next to a cell tower. And people will say, well, living next to a cell tower, it's the equivalent of, using a cell phone or a baby monitor or Bluetooth. But those are not things that we choose to interact with. Those are things that are choices. So we might have a cell phone that we use for emergencies because we are in the Berkshires and the roads can get pretty messy up here. And it's nice to have something in your car in case, you get into trouble, especially when you have, young kids, which was when I got my cell phone, was when I became a parent and my own mother was worried about me driving on the back roads in the winter. But we get to choose in our own homes how we consent to technology and how we interact with technology and what safe levels are, especially in our bedrooms where we sleep at night, where we really need to rest and repair and be away from this. We may not have the option, right, at the grocery store or even, going to school, what the Wi-Fi or the library situation is, but we do have control right here in our own homes, in our own bedrooms, to make sure that we're feeling safe and that our bodies can rest and heal. And it's not a sanctuary to us anymore. And the name of our street is called Alma, which to translate that from the Latin means soul or nourishing. And that's what this has been for us. It's been a nourishing, soulful place for us to raise our family and to feel connected to our community. And it's been the opposite. It's become a place where now we try and avoid as much as possible, but we can't because of COVID. So the schools are closed. We're practicing social distancing. So it's the place that makes us feel sick. It's the place that gives us headaches. And it's not even something that we knew about beforehand, and it's not something that we even, I think, understood until it happened to us. And we've been very fortunate that we do have a great team of osteopaths in the area who are knowledgeable about the issue and who've been able to really support us spending time away from the house, support our nervous system, give us some dietary suggestions, give us some advice around making sure that we are outside in nature as much as possible away from the tower. Those things have been helpful, but it's not something that we can live with all the time. They're not practical solutions to this issue.
Right. I have something to share with you that I just found out today. So I don't know if you're a part of the Girl Scouts, but the Girl Scouts have a new pin. The pin is a 5G pin. And there's a whole, and I'll send it to you, there's a whole outline of what the girls need to do. And in it, they talk about finding a cell tower and explaining how 5G will change the world. They also have a whole section on fact or fiction, health effects of 5G, where you discuss how millimeter wave spectrum is safe, I'm quoting, and does not cause harm to our health. And there's a section where you can click to learn more about the health issue. And you go to the Ericsson, which is a wireless telecom company site, and they have all of these myth facts, which are unfactual and half truths and misinformation. But I was floored. Literally right before we came on, someone sent this to me and said, this is an emergency. Like how how did this happen? And I wondered your thoughts on hearing about the Girl Scouts having information about how wireless is safe.
I don't think they know any better. I mean, like us, when I came into them, like, what's a cell tower? Sounds like a cell phone. And I had no idea it was cause harm. These girls probably have no idea. And so if their troop leaders are saying cell phone towers are good, kids, and there's nothing wrong, they're going to grow up saying these cell phone towers are good, and they're not going to know the truth about it. And so if they go out and they spread the information to other people who don't know, they're just going to get fed misinformation. And then so when a cell phone tower get put down in their area, they're going to go, oh, this is fine. And then they're going to start having symptoms. And then they're just going to start getting sick, and they're not going to know why. And I think this is wrong, and someone needs to change it, because it's going to just end up hurting more people. They don't know the truth.
What do you think that putting aside the Girl Scouts and Erickson, but what do you think kids your age need to know, and what do you think could be empowering to them? Like, what would really help for us adults, the big people in the room, to do for our children on this matter?
I think they need to do what mom and dad have been really good at doing. They need to tell us all about it. Like, I didn't know, and so I thought, oh, hey, this is okay. Now I think it's completely differently. So I think it needs to be like a talk like you have about everything else. It just needs to be one of those things that parents need to know to bring up to their kids. And they need to tell you all the bad things about it, so you know that it's wrong.
Well, one of the things that we do in our family, because my background is in education, biology, and naturopathy, is natural health is the precautionary principle. And it probably annoys my kids a little bit that when they go ice skating, what do they have to wear on their heads?
A helmet.
And when we go in a car, we have to wear what on our bodies?
Seatbelt.
A seatbelt, right? So we do things to be precautionary, right? Just because if you're going to strap blades on your feet and go ice skating on the ice where we know it's slippery, we want to protect our heads from injury. And so when we go bike riding, what do we wear?
Helmet.
Helmets, the same thing. And so if you're going to put wireless transmitting devices where people live, you need to give people the right information, and you need to give people the option of how they'd like to interact with that. And when you put something outside someone's house where they have no informed consent, you take that away from them. And what I've discovered is that, you know, Amelia does archery and she learns how to use her bow safely, right?
Yeah.
Before she ever gets to shoot it, she's given a list of instructions. And as parents, we have to sign an informed consent saying, here's the risks inherent with doing archery, the same thing with ice skating, or the same thing with her mountain bike riding club. We have trained instructors. We have safety gear. We check the tires and we make sure that the skates are a good fit. You know, the ice is maintained well. But when we give kids cell phones or tablets or devices, or we put wireless transmitters outside their houses, be it in the form of a cell tower or smart meters, we're not giving any information. We're not giving any instruction manual at all. We're hiding it, maybe if it's a phone, deep within the phone where you're never going to look for it and even understand it. So I think the biggest thing is the education is important, and the precautionary principle. We all want the benefit of wireless, to be able to connect to our phones and use them in appropriate ways. But we don't need to site them in residential neighborhoods that have a 35-foot height restriction next to 8 streets that are filled with families and children and elderly and pregnant women, when we know this is not just untested technology, we know it's unsafe technology. We actually have the science and the studies that blows us away. So I think educating people and allowing them to make choices for themselves and their family is really important. And these cell tower setbacks, I think, are huge because they protect everybody equally. Because what we're learning about is this is not just environmental injustice, this is racial injustice, that neighborhoods that do not have resources, those are the ones who often get toxic infrastructure placed into them. We've seen areas where you have second homeowners, where you have doctors and lawyers, you have people who are educated, and all of a sudden somebody wants to put a cell tower up and they have the resources to hire the lawyers. They get 1,000 signatures on the petition, they raise $15,000 overnight, and they're able to stop that. But you see in these poorer areas or these areas of color, that perhaps is not their option. It's not open to them. And so when you say you're going to have a setback 900 feet, 1,600 feet away from homes, 1,000 feet away from schools, homes, playgrounds, you protect everybody equally. And you're saying we value all lives equally. And if we wouldn't want to live there ourselves, every single one of our doctors has said we wouldn't want to live where you live next to a cell tower. And if they wouldn't want to live there, then nobody else should have to be subjected to it either. So I think that those would be huge, huge things, but correct information, not misinformation, because it's hard enough as it is, right? There's so much going on, but to then have to fight misinformation.
Right. We, in our community in Montgomery County, if we took a map and we placed where the school cell towers were on the map, and then looked at the schools that had high free lunch rates, higher minorities, high farms rates, and the majority of towers which were school cell towers, were on those schools with the high farm, high minority rates. And I imagine that that's similar throughout the country, because in here, when a cell tower is proposed, there are certain communities where they keep trying, but the community just, packs the room. They have all of these resources to really raise massive resistance to the tower. Some are doing lawsuits, filing for injunctions and so forth, which all cost money and requires so much, of which some communities don't have that in place. So we're seeing that all over.
Exactly. And that's when you look at it here, when we first started contacting real estate agents to say, what will happen to our house prices if the tower is, continues to be built? The response was, well, we're pretty lucky. We're still, even though we're considered a city, we have 40,000 people, it's still kind of rural out here. We haven't seen structures encroach too much in terms of, having to sell houses. But when we look at where they are here in Pittsfield, we see that they are at the mobile home park, and we see that they're on West Housatonic Street, which, the house values over there are about a fourth of what they are, elsewhere in the city. So it's lower socioeconomic, beautiful homes, but, we're not talking, our communities of doctors and lawyers and professionals. And so we're seeing that even here on that small scale, is that, for example, they wanted to build a hospice, and we really need hospice because hospice does great work in this world. But the people over where they had proposed it for didn't want it in their backyard. And the way it was proposed was actually for this 877 South Street land where the tower is on. Now I'm really wishing that the hospice had been built, because we probably wouldn't have a tower, we'd probably just have a hospice building. But the beautiful thing was, this was 10 years ago. And I don't know if the owners of the building have changed hands, but it's definitely a new mayor and a new administration. But what had happened when they proposed the hospice and it got rejected for the original site, and it was proposed for this site here, was they had a community meeting. So there's a church at the bottom of the street, and they sent letters to everyone. They put in the front page of the paper. They made sure everyone was notified, and they said, hey, we want to build this hospice. And we understand that at the top of the hill, it's 35-foot height restricted land, and we've got this building. And so the neighbors came, and I had just had Jocelyn, so I sent Gareth, and they had this meeting, and they said, we have issues with through traffic, with height, with noise. And they worked out a compromise, and they said, listen, we'll put it lower on the land, not on the crest of the hill. You won't see it. We need to have a through street, but we will have a gate and it will be locked, so you won't have traffic coming through. That will reduce it. You know, they met all these criteria to meet the needs of the community and the needs of having this hospice. And ultimately, it was granted the special permit to be built here on the land. It just didn't get the funding. But I give this as an example of what happens when we work together to place important infrastructure, whether it's a building or a tower or whatever it is, that there is, you know, with this issue, I do truly believe we can all work together. It's not an us against them issue. I really believe that it's a community and collaboration issue that communities want to have, for example, commercial solar fields or hospice projects or cell towers, but everybody also wants to feel comfortable with where they are located. And that if we work together and people have a voice at the table, I believe we can come to those, you know, for example, that's 60 acres of open land. That tower could have been built anywhere on that land that would have put it much further away from these houses, which would have potentially had much less of an impact on what we're experiencing today. And once this tower was kind of announced and, you know, we discovered it, other people said, you know, I have land and I could have put it here. You know, people said, I would have taken it, and we don't have any houses around where we are. It would have been a safer place for everyone. You know, so again, we saw good people coming forward saying, you know, if we have discussions about what the infrastructure need is, how do we together as a community have these conversations? How can we be proactive and say, where should these towers be located? So that they will not impact people as much. And for example, if we had known in 2017 that this tower had been permitted and we'd gone through all the channels and for whatever reason it definitely needed to be here, we would have had 4 years in which to find a new home, to which to be able to say, this tower is not something that we want to stick around for. And we would have had the ability in 4 years to be able to look for a home and to be able to relocate before we were ever exposed to it. But because of COVID, the housing prices here in Pittsfield have gone up 37%, but unemployment, you know, people here have lost their jobs because of COVID. So the reality for many people is they're not getting a mortgage, they can't sell here, and housing prices have gone up because people from Boston and New York are coming to the area, buying up these houses because they're got land and they're beautiful and they're in nature and they can work from home and work anywhere. And it's pricing the people here out of the market. So it's been a real issue because it's put us in this position where not only are we dealing with the pandemic, not only are we dealing with job loss, but now we're dealing with being sick in our own homes. And we're dealing with an administration who, like Amelia says, is trying so hard to support us and to be on the right side of history, but who feels like their hands are tied and they don't know what they can do or what power they have. And in reality, here in the city of Pittsfield, our Mayor Tyer has preventatively or proactively closed restaurants for 18 days. Nobody else in the state of Massachusetts has done that, but we did have a COVID outbreak. And so even though the majority of restaurants were following protocols and not having any issues with the contact tracing being traced back to them, as a preventative measure, she called for all restaurants to be closed. Now, when we have called into open comments and have asked for the tower to be turned off, some people respond, would the mayor even have the power to do that? And, it's a private business. The mayor can't tell people what to do. But if the mayor can close restaurants proactively and preventatively for 18 days, perhaps she could ask Verizon or enforce Verizon to turn the tower off for 18 days and to see if our symptoms decrease and if we're feeling any better. I think that that would be a very accurate measure to see that if the insomnia and the headaches and the tinnitus and the vertigo and the dizziness and skin rashes go away within that time frame, then we understand what's causing it.
So how can people get in touch with you and support the work you're doing in Pittsfield? I know you're in the middle of preparing to move, but can you give us the websites and other resources for people interested in learning more?
So the best place to reach us is Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and it is www.facebook.com/Pittsfield Cell. At Pittsfield Cell, PITTSFIELDCELL. Pittsfield Cell is our Facebook page, and we try and keep that regularly updated with information. We also have a website, and it is stoptower.com. So www.stoptower.com, and people can read some of the letters of support from Arrowhead that was blighted, and from some of our city councilors, and from our state rep, Tricia Farley-Bouvier, and some of our print articles. Now that hasn't been updated because the recent article is that at the last city council meeting, the city councilors unanimously supported the health department to do an investigation into the health effects of the tower. And since that happened, that was January 26th, it's now February 15th, we've not heard what that investigation will look like, or how it will be conducted, or if we will even be included as part of that. And I know that there are many advocates and doctors who have called in on our behalf that I have never even met, that I haven't even been in contact with, but who have heard our story, and out of the kindness of our heart and being specialists in these areas, be it environmental medicine or toxicology or the pediatric neurologist, that people are providing our health department with all the information that it needs to be able to do this investigation and to be able to do it well. Because we say that knowledge is power, but knowledge is only power if we actually use that information wisely, if we actually apply it. So we can have all the science, we can have all the studies, we can submit those 1,100 articles that Environmental Health Trust and Children's Health Defense submitted against the FCC. But unless somebody actually takes the time to read them and understand them and apply them to policy, and that's what we're saying for Valentine's Day, that our love language is policy change.
That's great.
That we really need to see the policies be updated so that there's science and there's law and there's policy, and that we protect our vulnerable populations, our children, our elderly, those with pre-existing health conditions, by putting the policies in place. And right now, we're very blessed here in Massachusetts. We have the ability to do this at the municipal level. And even here in Berkshire County, we have Stockbridge and Great Barrington, two adjacent towns, as people who have setbacks and protective wireless zoning ordinances that are written into their bylaws.
But you don't. So they do and you don't.
They do and we don't, which is really fascinating. And even Lenox, the adjacent town, Lenox and Lee, they fall under the guise of Tri-Town Health. And we've been really blessed that the director of the health department at the adjacent towns has put their hand up and said, we want to learn more about this issue. We want to be proactive and preventative. We want to get in front of it. They actually hired Cecilia Doucette of Massachusetts for Safe Technology and John Meerum of Hilltown Health to put on a safe cell tower siting workshop for anyone who was interested to understand and to learn the issues around cell tower siting. So towns next door to us have said, wow, maybe if this is coming, we need to get in front of it and learn about it now. Our own city has said, we think that these are great things, but there's fear mongering. I don't know if you've run into this in all your years of doing this work. You're a pro at it. We're very new to this, and there are so many pro-industry lawyers and lobbyists that the city has hired an attorney who's supposed to be independent, but if you go to his website, it's all about pro-industry, who says under FCC, we can't have setbacks. And yet, if we look at all these other municipalities, they all have setbacks and they've done it successfully. And
Right.
not only do these setbacks not only are the setbacks legal, they actually prevent lawsuits because they tell the telecommunication companies exactly where they can site towers. So instead of saying, no, we're going to deny this permit and then have the telecom come back and sue the municipality, it says, hey, here's our guidelines. Here's where you can put them and here's where you can't put them. Pick a place where you can, and it protects everyone equally. These are such good ideas, and it will be fantastic if Pittsfield can get on board with implementing them, because if not, every single homeowner can experience the same nightmare that we did, which is they can wake up one day and without any notification, find a tower being constructed in their neighborhood with a clean permit with a city who refuses to intervene on their behalf. And
Right.
that's what we want to prevent.
Before we go, because our time's coming up, but I wanted you to describe something that you told me before we began this call. It was about your relationship with the cell tower, and you were doing a metaphor. And this is something I've thought a lot about, how it's like a bad relationship. Tell me about what you put together there. Describe it.
Yeah, let me actually see. I want to see if I can pull it up for you. So there was a Facebook challenge, a Valentine's Facebook challenge.
I see.
And, the cell tower is now part of our landscape. And in being an advocate for safe cell tower setbacks, my goal was never for this to be an adversarial relationship or a David and Goliath. My background is in education, and I ran a preschool at a church for 9 years. So my goal is to be very collaborative and work together. And it's been very frustrating to not have people want to work together to actively problem solve this. And so for Valentine's Day, there's this Valentine's Day challenge out on Facebook. And so we had these questions. How did you meet? So I met my cell tower because he surprised me from coming to my neighborhood through an illegal access point on Alma Street. Our first date was March 13th, 2020, when I learned about him. We've been together since he was fully erected in August. Our age difference is 43 years. I'm older. Who was interested first? He was. I had no interest in getting within 1,600 feet of him. A few miles is preferable, and I can really enjoy his type from afar. Now he's taller by 109.4 feet. Who said I love you first? He did, but when he messed with my kids and my neighbors, I told him he wasn't welcome. He needed to move out, and we filed a restraining order, but Judge Hogan never ruled, and he still won't go away no matter how much I beg. I'm the most impatient. I'm ready for our relationship to be over. I'm the most sensitive. My heart flutters whenever I'm around him. He's the loudest because his compound with the backup generator and transmitters has a constant annoying hum that gives the people closest to him tinnitus. He's the most stubborn. He won't seem to change his position no matter how hard I ask. He falls asleep first because he gives me insomnia and I'm up all night. I'm the better cook because he makes me too nauseous to eat. He's the better morning person. He's up 24/7. I'm the better driver because his blinking red light is distracting from whatever road you're around. You can always see him. He is the most competitive, often against other telecoms. The funniest, well, the joke seems to be on us when we all got sick. Where do we eat out? Well, any place far away from antennas. And it goes on. And in all seriousness, there's nothing funny about living next to a cell tower. And we really need to protect our hearts, our homes, and our health. For me, I've experienced those palpitations. I actually had to do a 24-hour Holter monitor and an EKG. And I wouldn't wish this on anyone. Not only is it uncomfortable and it impacts my life and the quality of it, right? It's no way to live or to feel in my own home, but it's impacted the quality of my relationship because it's not something that people talk about. I mean, there's like a stigma around, and I didn't even know the term like microwave illness or, environmental sensitivity to, EMFs or radio frequency radiation. We're still learning about it. And thank goodness we've got a great team of doctors to help kind of navigate us through, but not everybody has that, right? And some people are told that it's in their head or they're making it up or they don't believe it and I think that's really hard. And I went to the health conference, the EMS health conference that was online back in January, and I heard some of the doctors speak, and what they said really touched me was if somebody comes as a patient to your practice and they say, I have a headache or I have tinnitus and it really started when a cell tower was built in my neighborhood, the response isn't no, that's not true. The response is, I don't know enough about that to be able to treat you successfully, and I'll find out who can. Because just because it wasn't in their medical textbook 30 years ago doesn't mean that the medical information and the science isn't out there today. Because 20 years ago, we weren't blanketed in cell towers the way we are in 2021. It was just a different reality. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone until I was a grown-up. And now there are children who are born and they've got access to that phone from the moment of birth, right? They've got the baby monitor next to their heads, and they've got, the tablets and the pads that connect to everything for entertainment. And with COVID and parents needing to work from home and the lack of childcare, these devices are the things that these kids are exposed to all the time, right? And while the doctors are learning about it, I think we're all in this learning together. And I think that's the hard part. People can get outraged on behalf of the fact that there was no notification to abutters, that there was no community transparency, there was no community discussions about this tower, there was a deceptive address that was used, that after 2 years the permit expired and it was never renewed, there was no balloon testing notification. We can all agree that this was the wrong place to place a tower. But as soon as we start talking about health effects, it's very hard for people to have those conversations.
Yeah. Industry has done a real snow job and made it seem like it's a mental health issue.
This was not on our radar, right? Before the tower went up, this was not something that we thought could happen to us. This was not something we thought was a possibility. And I don't want it, and that's the thing. Like, I want to be having an experience where I can not be worried about these things and not have a sensitivity towards them. And I think there was a lot of shock and disbelief, and even like, yeah, I need to, start seeing a counselor and make sure that this is, can I meditate this away? Can I do affirmations? Can I do really good sleep hygiene at night and just have some lavender bath and some aromatherapy? And will that make my palpitations go away? And you know what? It didn't. And I remember a time where we moved to New Zealand, and I thought I was stressed because it was a new country. I didn't know these people. It was a very rapid change. Like one day we were in Australia and the next day we're in New Zealand, and I couldn't breathe. And I've never identified as an asthmatic before. But I am a yoga teacher. And so I just started doing some yoga postures and some affirmations and some stretches. And I kept saying, like, this is all in your head. You don't have, you can breathe, you're safe, you're going to find friends, it's going to work out, you're in a beautiful country. I finally went to a doctor after 2 weeks, and they said, you're having an asthma attack. And I said, what? I'm not asthmatic. And they said, welcome to New Zealand. You have some of the most diverse pollens in plant life anywhere in this entire world. It happened to be the season where everything was in bloom. And they said, even if you've never had it where you're from, welcome. We see this happens a lot. And they gave me a little steroid inhaler, and I took a little puff, and I could breathe for the first time. And here
Wow.
I was thinking, it was in my mind, right? And here I was thinking, if I could just meditate enough, if I could just say enough affirmations that I'm safe and I'm well, I'd be fine. And with the tower, I think I went through that same process of like checking myself, right? Like, is this something? But when my daughter comes downstairs, who had just had her 10th birthday, and she says, Mama, I'm dizzy, headachy, and buzzy. And she's never had that before, right? And you go, okay, we're not around anyone because we're social distancing. You don't have a fever. And I gave her some water and some children's Tylenol. And then another neighbor wakes up in AFib. These guys have rolling headaches. I mean, it sounds like the worst nightmare, and you don't want to believe it. And you want
Right.
to believe that the government would protect you, right? Yep. Just like with tobacco or asbestos or thalidomide or with leaded gasoline or with Roundup. Like, you want to think that if there's a new product that's out there and people think it's great and they promote it, and then they discover it's not safe. From the time you discovered it wasn't safe, you would implement policies to protect people immediately. But with all of those things, it took so long, right? I mean, 20 years.
50.
50,
In
right.
some cases, we're still battling with, I mean, look at vaping. We're decades and decades. That's exactly, I have to say, I kind of broke up with, like, learning about this issue is kind of like breaking up with this this sense of safety that I had around certain things that I just couldn't, I knew about lead and asbestos, and I was, I filtered my water, and I tried to eat healthy, and this was like, I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. I mean, could the government really have made such a huge mistake that affect our children? Like, that was where I was like, I'm a mom. I was like, but this is about the kids. Like,
right.
No one would actually, they really couldn't. No, they couldn't. I mean, they couldn't do that. It was beyond my mind to even understand it. And when I started raising awareness on it, it was a friend who came to me. I said, I don't understand. Like, I'm telling people, they're just not getting it. What is going on? What do I need to do here? And she said, Theodora, it's just like a new food with your kids. You put it out, they've never seen it before. They are going to think it's like an alien. They're not going to touch it. You just have to keep putting it out. She said, I think it's like, I forget now, it was like 16 times. You have to put it on the table 16 times. And then they'll be like, oh, I'll try that little thing. So I thought that just it inspired me, because I was like, well, if people need to hear it 16 times, then I had best get started.
Yes.
Because we got to get to 16, and I still have people that contact me who I've known for a long time, and they say, oh, Theodora, remember when you were talking about that? Well, I heard from so-and-so, oh, me, kind of like maybe there's something there. And I'm like, like, they're only on the 5th time. Like, I still need, we got to just keep it moving. That's why it's so important what you're doing, Courtney. You've been so effective in speaking out. We have to speak out at every turn. Use your 3 minutes. I mean, that's what I'm hearing you and your family have done. Like, that is our time to speak. Now, I'll be honest. When I learned about this and realized how hard it was, I felt disheartened. Like, what? I get 3 minutes to speak about something that requires, as it takes a long time to understand all this and to get past all those hurdles, those, oh no, but this, but not that, and you sort of, it's not until you look at the picture that it becomes clearer, and that takes time to grasp. Although not if you're immediately getting sick, then it becomes quite clear quite soon, because you can't pretend, make it this invisible thing that you can ignore. But
Yeah.
speaking out at every turn, and frankly being relentless and determined, and when people say no, say, well, let me find a different way to communicate that. I mean, this is not, it's not an option to
Yeah.
not deal with it.
Absolutely. And when the tower was being built, I'll tell you, we had trucks coming up every day, making noise, doing construction. We learned they were obviously accessing it illegally because there was no road for them to come from 877 South Street. There was no road constructed to the tower site. So they all came past our house, and we're trying to school and work from home. And it was crazy. And so I try and work like 9 to 5, educating people about the tower, right? Like instead of just those 3 minutes, I photocopied 77-page packets and I sent them to every city councilors, and I sent them certified mail, and so that there was no excuse that they didn't get them, because I had the time and date that they had been received and signed for, and I made it easy for them. I put a self-addressed stamped envelope with a 1-page return sheet with tick the box if they were going to support us and on what areas, or if they were not interested, right? Because we have to work with the willing. So if they weren't interested, then I would have that in writing as well. And so we use our 3 minutes, but we use our time. But on the weekends, I would rest. But now the tower's been transmitting since August, and there is no rest. So people say, have a good weekend. People say, have a Merry Christmas. And every day I wonder, will today be the last day that I'm in my own home? Will this be the last Christmas that we celebrate together with all of our rituals and traditions? Amelia just had her 13th birthday. We have a measuring wall. I don't know if you did this with your daughter, your kids.
Yeah.
We measure right their height on the wall. And I haven't made her 13th mark yet, because I'm afraid it's going to be the last mark that I make on this wall, which is our home. And at a time where our homes are our sanctuaries and they're everything to us, I don't know how we get people to understand that we do not consent to a cell tower that is radiating radio frequency radiation 24/7. I cannot make it turn off on the weekends. And I cannot make it turn off when I want to go to bed at night. And I cannot stop it when my daughter has skin rashes or feels like her skin is crawling, or when my other daughter wakes up in the morning and instead of the ritual of drinking 2 glasses of water and having a good breakfast and our children's Tylenol, we just can't shift that headache. And we have to call the school nurse and we have to say she won't be attending online classes today. There is a cost to all of this. There's a cost to the families and to the children and to their education and to their well-being and to their security and to their health. And we owe it to them to be advocates. And it doesn't stop, right? On the weekend, I don't get to have a weekend where I wake up and feel good, because the tower is still on. And so I will continue to fight for my neighbors and my children and my home. And I'll fight for all of us. And I think that that's the key, is using our 3 minutes wisely. But if my story of what happened here in Pittsfield, Massachusetts can influence Southwick, Massachusetts, or Verona, New York, or New Orleans that we're working on today, right? If we can share our stories and educate community development boards, who are often made up of volunteer committee members, right? It's not their job to understand these issues. It's our job to educate them so they do.
Right.
Because they don't have this information, just like I didn't, just like you didn't. We thought we would know, we didn't. But now we know better, so we can do better. We can inform the policies. We can inform the decisions about tower placement. And we can't say we don't have the information or the science, because it's all there. And I'm happy to send anybody a 77-page packet to inform and to educate them so that they have that information. because I want them to know that if they place a tower in a neighborhood or next to a home without somebody's consent, then they are liable. They are liable for the damage that creates. They're liable for the medical bills that that generates. They're liable for the temporary accommodation that these people need to have. That there has to be a way that if the telecommunications company or the Girl Scouts or whoever it is wants to say that these towers are safe, if you can promise me that and something happens, there needs to be a way of making people whole and being responsible. And so now we're starting to see municipalities write into their codes, right? These people have to carry insurance. These people have to be able to have us test independently the levels of radio frequency EMFs twice or 3 times a year, right? We have to have this built into the code that it's not telecom self-certifying telecom, right? We have to make sure that we have independent consultants who can come in. And we also obviously have to have the FCC levels be reflective of the biological damage that's done, because we know, right, that people are getting sick below these levels that are considered guidelines.
Right.
You know, and that these guidelines are not protecting all of us. You know, there's that great campaign, We Are Not Sam. We're not the dummy that was used 25 years ago for a 6-minute phone call. That's not our level of radio frequency radiation EMFs that we're exposed to. And we know that there are no safe levels of RF EMFs. And we know that we're all biologically different, right? And so that damage can be occurring to everyone. Some of us just feel it and some of us don't. But it doesn't mean that that's not real. And I try and equate it to a peanut allergy, being a preschool teacher for so many years, right? Some children go into anaphylactic shock just by introducing peanuts into the environment. They don't even have to consume it.
Right. Right.
But we don't dismiss them.
Right. We don't say, well, they don't count.
We don't say, right? We say we will have a peanut-free area. We'll carry EpiPens. We'll do whatever we can to make sure that people are educated, that the school nurses, that the teachers, the administrators are making decisions that support these children. And we need to do the same thing when we discover that there are children who have this sensitivity to the wireless radiation. We need to make sure that we are protecting people in the same way, that we're not dismissive, or we say, well, you know, just because I don't get a headache or I don't get a skin rash or I don't, doesn't mean that you do, because you could eat gluten and have a response and I could eat gluten and not, you know, I mean, we're all individuals. And I think people are starting to recognize this. The tides are starting to turn. We're starting to have senators and congressmen speak out. And I think that that permission gives other people the ability to speak out. We're starting to see that even the strength of the lobbying in the industry and the censorship and all of that that's out there is only giving fuel to the fire for people to want to express the truth even more.
Right. Right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and speaking out. I hope that this video, you know, helps educate people and spurs them to taking action on this, so that, you know, this, what your family is suffering is not for nothing. Although I wish you didn't have to go through this, but I have to say we are contacted all the time with stories that are tragic and are very similar to your stories. People who have antennas mounted, they're in apartment buildings and there's one right on top of them, or people who, you know, had a small cell put right in front of their home. So this is just everyone's story and it has to stop. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And I think, you know, what I want to encourage people to do is to reach out to us on Facebook, on Pittsfield Cell, or they can email us hello@stoptower.com. And hearing other people's voices. We had a time for open comments and people called in and said, you know, I lost my son due to a cell tower glioblastoma, right? And it hits home. When people, these, we don't share our stories to open ourselves up for criticism, right? To open ourselves, nobody wants to be doing this advocacy work. We find ourselves in this position and we have a choice that we can either make a difference or we can complain in silence. And we don't want to become jaded. I want to teach my preschoolers that they're little, but they're powerful. We can make a difference if we all take individual actions to move the needle forward, right? And so I want people to contact us. I want us to be able to share our stories with their community development boards, with their city planners. I want this to be able to not be in vain. My family losing our family home, being sick, the thousands and thousands of dollars of medical bills, it will not be in vain if we can create protective, proactive policies and we can inform other communities that this is not hypothetical, right? Because all the time, Theo, we hear this is maybe people will get sick, but we don't know. Maybe house prices will decrease, but we don't know, right? Maybe people will be impacted and the quality of their life will go down. We do know. You hear this. You hear the stories every single day. The lawyers hear the stories every single day. We hear those stories every single day. And what we need to do is band these communities together, give them the information and the resources that they can hand over to their city councilors and not just read it and be a name or a number or something that's not real, but we're not hypothetical. We have names. I'm Courtney Gilardi. I live here in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and I never thought I would be blindsided by a cell tower outside my home. And in a million years, I never thought that my children, myself, or my community would get sick from it. But this is our story.
Thank you.
Thank you.